screen. This is 3, 2, 1.
Oh, we're live again. Were we
What?
live before?
We were, but it's a blue screen.
No, I don't even see it. Oh my heck. This is so crazy.
And it looks like it's blue screen
It
again.
looks like a blue screen once again. Okay.
Wait. Let me just check. Oh no, it's on.
We are there. Why is it not
Oh,
showing
OMG.
online?
Maybe it needs to be refreshed.
Wow.
Seriously. We just renewed this subscription too.
we did just renew this subscription. And maybe we'll be making some changes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, try that again. It said it, so it is live.
It's live.
There, it's live. Oh my gosh.
Saying. Oh, so much fun. You know, it wouldn't be that big of a deal for me actually if I. Okay, I'm going to turn mine off.
Yep.
Okay. If I felt like I was more like technologically sound and understood all the workings. Does this need to be on there though? If I touch, okay, hold on. Let's get some things off of the screen. Have an arrow on my nose. Yeah. Oh my gosh. We'll get it figured out again. It's Wednesday. And again, it's like a Wednesday that kind of feels like a Monday. And not that anything's crazy. It's just one of those days. So
was it Tuesday? No, it was Monday. That was like showed no weather, and then it was hailing at one point.
Yeah, it was.
So Monday. That was amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome Monday afternoon. Which, yeah, it's hilarious. Watch people complain about that. I mean, if you've made plans, I can understand, but and you're not expecting
Danielle or someone sharing that they were taking all their littles out from their class and they were all ready, and then it was hailing, and they're just like, "Yep, we're not going outside." Open the door
to a hailstorm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Should we breathe?
Just jump right into the breathing.
Let's just jump right into the breathing this week, and then we'll do the rest of it.
Okay.
Will you do the breathing?
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much how it's going to be. Put your hand on your heart. Close your eyes if you want to, and just feel yourself breathe. Feel your lungs fill up. Like, I just think of this science video I watched as a kid and the oxygen exchange, you know, how the blood cells are darker and then they get oxygenated and then they're bright red. So imagine, like, with every breath, you're like invigorating your whole body, and wiggle your toes and feel like the oxygen rich blood going like right to the tips of your toes, flows right through your body. So amazing. And do that till you're ready.
Yeah, it does make me think of, you know, an oxygenated body is a healthy body. Disease can't. I don't even know in which of my studies I learned that, but disease can't live in an oxygenated body. It's where there's constant, because we're always renewing. Our bodies are always renewing. Every 7 years we have a new body, completely different from what we did then. Like, our tissues are always dying off and renewing, and it's more a matter of how we are supporting that renewal. Are we supporting it in healthy ways that are going to keep our bodies strong and renewing, regenerating is maybe a better word, regenerating in healthy ways that keep us going and vibrant and bright, which is where the oxygen comes in, because it's getting all the blood flow and it's pushing oxygen all the way down to the toes and all the muscles throughout your whole body, and allowing for muscle growth and exchanges of all the yummy stuff that our bodies require. Or are we going through the regenerative process in a degenerative kind of way, where we're not we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not taking moments to just sit and breathe, or to exercise and use the heart and the lungs and to allow the muscles to do their thing. And it's always a fascinating thing to me when I hear, when you talk about the breathe that oxygen in, and that an oxygenated body is a healthy body. There's a lot of things that can be, I'm going to say, healed, made better, simply by breathing. You've got all the different breathing techniques and practices out there that you can do, and it's just simply pausing and remembering to breathe is a simplest way to get into it. So, but what I love about it, and as far as this program goes, which is like, hey, welcome to Wednesday. It's another edition of Live and Unscripted with Jennifer, spelled JJ, and
Leah, spelled Ligia.
That just makes me giggle now. It's a program where we don't have a script. We don't have questions. And when we have a guest, we don't have a script and we don't have questions. It's a program led by inspiration. I know I said that twice.
Yeah,
because I was referring to us, and then I was referring to a guest. Just making sure. It's interesting how when I have offered a guest to come on and they're like, all right, give me your list of questions. I'm like, there are none. The small freak out that they go through in like, wait a minute, I can't be prepared for it. I can't. But I love that it's the breathing moments that prepare us for the presence and the inspiration that comes and is the part of this program that I absolutely love, and also scares me at the same time. Like, I've been doing it for a long time. It's how I prefer to do things. And yet it still offers a bit of anticipation and just like anxious. I don't know if anxiousness is just, it's like an excited energy of like, what is going to actually take place. So this is a program where we let inspiration be the guide.
Well, to relate it to maybe the paint cast part of like going to a blank piece of paper or blank canvas, there is an anxiousness that comes with that, but it doesn't have to be scary but it's I don't know what's going to happen here, versus seeing what you could draw and the anxiousness that comes with of like what it's supposed to be. That's what came to my mind.
That's what comes to me. Like, my anxiousness there is like, am I going to be able to make this look good, versus, ooh, what's going to come out on my page today?
That difference right there.
Yeah.
Am I trying to make this look good, or what will come through me?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's, again, it's another piece of what I really enjoy about what we do here at Live and Unscripted is it's the letting go of what it's supposed to be or what it's supposed to look like, or to look professional, or all put together in place of like actually allowing humanness to just be real, and to allow inspiration to be there and conversation to flow naturally. And it's amazing. Like, really, there's only been a couple of conversations that have been challenging. And that's because a guest still has that, like, I got to do this perfect, or I got to do, and, or maybe I've had that as well, but it's always fun to see what comes out. So today I was like, I don't know that I wasn't sure I wanted to do it because I'm not feeling the greatest today. And there's onions cooking, and that makes my eyes feel even grosser. They're burning, and my sinuses are like, who's cooking onions in the house? I am.
I will caveat that to whose idea was it to do that this morning?
I was about to say that, like, it was totally my idea, and I did almost beg for Leah to cut the onions so that I didn't have to, because we're making this stuff called salsa ranchera, which I oddly love because it has all of the things I do not like in it. But when they're mushed together and they're blended up, so I don't know what they are, it makes a very lovely sauce.
Which is new to my experience of salsa ranchera, because we eat it chunky on our eggs and beans and rice, and it's so freaking delicious. But it's become something whole, just new, that we put on like sandwiches and stuff. So
wait, are we saying that that we can take the same things and change them up a little bit, and it's still the same context, and we actually, it can be used in a different way and still bring joy and pleasure and taste. And seriously, it has peppers, green peppers, which I don't enjoy green peppers, and onions, which I despise. I have an allergy by choice. And it has tomatoes, which I'm not a super fan of. I love salsa, but again, I blend it. And this is what goes in this sauce with some seasonings. And if I were to just see it in a bowl, I would not eat it. But because it's blended,
and you tasted it,
and I've tasted it, it's like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah,
I could do this.
So good.
Oh my gosh. Squirrel.
Yeah.
Anyway, the onions. So Tired Eyes. I wasn't sure I wanted to come on here today just because, you know, Leah hasn't felt super good. And today's really a practice of humanness, of showing up and doing the thing, even if it's not as excited as we usually do it, or with the energy that we see, because that's life. That's life. And we're, as part of Righteous Rebels, in the business of giving you permission to just be real, and to live and honor and celebrate your humanness, even on days when, you know, the energy might be lower and maybe the subject aren't as fun to talk about, or it brings emotion, which I'm super good at. And
I think it's just so true. Like, I was talking with a client the other day, and she was telling me, you know, she's going through a lot of life stuff, and, you know, she sees all this stuff on Facebook, and, you know, she's on a bit of a struggle bus, and she's not wanting to bring anyone else down. And just talking to that point of how we look on Facebook, and people just want to see you doing well and doing this, and, you know, not airing out your laundry. But the reality is we all have it, and we all have days that it doesn't feel comfortable. And, you know, I really want to, one, stay consistent with what we're doing, but two, just offer another side of, like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and that's super okay. And it's essential, and it gives us like a way to connect to something that's real, that doesn't feel put on, as comforting as that can be sometimes.
Right. So, like we all can make our lives like that.
Yeah. So
I don't know why I did it like that, because I think that's how it feels sometimes. It's like,
sorry, what was that?
I don't know if I can do it again. Okay, I noticed we have a few people watching us. Hey, let us know who's here, because I can't see on the program.
Do you like onions? Answer that
question.
Yeah,
do you like onions? Do you like green peppers? Do you like tomatoes? Like, where are you feeling? Is today one of those days for you? Yay, we have Leah here. Woo-hoo! Anyway, so like in the description, we talked about, like, you know, we're in Idaho. It's springtime in Idaho. There's a lot of cray weather sometimes, and one day it can be totally happy, and the next day it's not as happy. I'm talking about the weather. Hey Jen, woo woo! It's good to see you on here. I love that. It's lunchtime. I'm like, how can you be watching us? It's lunchtime. I love it. Yeah, and just how temperamental and cranky the weather can be. But then relaying it to, like, oh my gosh, the lessons that weather gives us. And I love weather, and I love to be out in all kinds of weather. But I've had this recognition of, like, my own internal weather, and how right, blood, dreary, yeah. And how that feels. Like, yesterday we were outside playing with a bunch of kids, and sunshiny, came in with color on my skin. And today it's like completely opposite, like, weather, and how that happens inside of us sometimes. Like, we can be really up and feeling connected, and just like, oh my gosh, everything's going okay, and wake up the next day and be like, what the
yeah,
what the.
Definitely. Like, on Saturday, we went to help out with the duck donathon. which was super fun. And that was the day I felt like just on top of it and connected, and like, there's a lot of stuff going on in my world, and it felt like nothing could touch me. Like I felt unstoppable. And there I was still, I don't know, I wonder if that started that day. Because I remember being tired, but I was still in a good space. And just the rest of that weekend and into today, like, my body's been really hurting. And I don't know if it's like a bug or just like I'm just tired and whatever. And just how that plays with your mind, and how that plays with like wanting to be frustrated. It makes me think of the girl. I play soccer on Mondays, and this girl was having an issue with her knee, and she fell over, and she was just so frustrated because she wants to get up and go and do things, and her knee's not functioning in the way that she wants it to. And I was just feeling a lot of that for myself. And there's lots of things that I want to be doing, and I just haven't had the energy, or just like my body's been hurting. So it's frustrating when you're in that space, and just the reminders of let yourself rest.
Well, and also like bringing to the point of when, and this is something that I learned quite a few years ago, and get the reminders of, and like even reminding myself of, like, when we're moving through heavy emotions or emotional healing or any of the stuff, it takes a toll on our bodies. It's not just emotional. Like, it is a physical thing as well, as our bodies are releasing the tensions and the memories and the whatnots that they've been hanging on to, that maybe we're unaware of, because we call it a knee ache, or we call it a backache, or we call it a, maybe it's an illness or whatever it is. Mother, I do not love onions. You're funny. My family thinks it's really funny to try and hide them in food. I do not think it's so funny. But just the reminder that when you're moving through emotions, like, and challenging outside situations that foster up mental things, or in the emotional body, or even in the spiritual body, that it is going to manifest at some point physically. Whether it's just like trying to get your attention of like, hey, pay attention, like there's something going on out here, and you're not paying attention that there's something going on out here, and so we're going to create an illness or an ouchie or whatever. Or it's the, hey, we've been letting go of a lot of stuff, and this is really tiring, and you gotta have some downtime and some rest and recovery and rejuvenation, and going back to that breathing thing, and offering your body all of the oxygen it needs to regenerate in healthy ways, and as it's shedding old tissues and all that, and we're going to say old programming and old ways of functioning, that all of that drops off. But it does have a cost. We've talked about this before, but about how happiness has a cost, and how love has a cost, and that in order for us to really hear and follow our own hearts and our own voices, that sometimes it upsets other people, and people fall out of our lives, or situations fall out of our lives,
even
or
within
jobs,
ourselves,
or
right?
even
Like
within
the cost
ourselves.
of giving up parts of ourselves that we've become very comfortable with, that the cost of, I'm not this person because I've grown out of that, and that shedding of
Well, I would
that
say the cost
identity.
of patterns. Yeah, the cost of what we think is our identity, and that stuff, it takes some time and it takes a toll. So as the weather has shifted and changed, and just noticing what's going on in our own bodies, we've been talking a lot about that, about just the importance of resting, and how much we want to judge. How much I've wanted to judge moments where I have felt really tired, or spaces of my lived experience where I had to have a nap every day, and how frustrating I wanted to feel because of that. And now it's like, I really do my best to honor that. I'm human. I don't always, and I find I still want to judge it and be hard on myself that way.
Well, whenever I'm going through something that's challenging, I always think like, what's the lesson, right? And this week, as I've had like really great days and then really not so great days,
and like, again, we're judging what those are.
Sure,
great days, depending on how they feel for us.
Well, I think I look at it as energy. Like
I was going to say, define that.
Well,
when you
asked me last week, I think it was on the Paint Cast, we were talking about how I can be in a good space to do a run, even though like because I was so focused on how's it going to feel after and what I'm going to do after the run, and I found,
because I was dragging my feet to go on the run.
Yeah, but I was in good energy. I had energy. I felt good.
Yeah.
And then I found that more challenging this week to even see past what I have to do in this moment. And I think part of my lessons this week is really feeling, okay, I can feel on top of the world. I can feel super energetic, but remember there's, it's almost like it feels like a humbling, like stay humble. Don't, it's amazing to be connected. It's amazing to feel like you're unstoppable, but remember your humanness. Remember you need to rest. Remember you can't just ignore everything that it's taken to get to those places of connection. And it's been amazing to have have those moments more often, or those days more often than I have in a long time. But that to stay humble and stay in gratitude and just be thankful that for whatever gifts I have each day.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of Jesus stories. So for those of you who believe in a Jesus story, and I love the stories of Jesus, but just how it reminds me of like when you were saying our humanness, we're human, but we're not human. Like I believe we are these incredible souls that are playing around on this planet in these human suits, like a spacesuit, and getting to human suits and getting to have all these different experiences. But I think of like, or ascended beings, maybe Buddha and other stories that I've heard that way, of these incredible spiritual beings who had physical bodies, but they knew how to rest. They knew the value of resting and of pulling away from the crowds and rejuvenating and renewing their energy so that they could continue to do the work that they did and teach the amazing things that they taught. And I think that for ourselves, like, we are human, but we're so much more than human. And it's that for me, it's that learning how to honor both things, like really coming to an understanding of my greatness while like living fully in my human experience. And sometimes I think I just let my humanness take over. I don't know.
I was thinking of just how when people tell me I'm not creative, or I have a block, or when I experience that in my own space, I think of like how hard it is to start that flow sometimes. But it really just takes some practice and showing up when you don't want to. And what happens is, like, when you start playing in the creativity space, it begets more creativity. Like, you'll get more ideas the more you practice in that space, and
you're in the energy of it.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier about, here you're releasing this and you're gaining awareness of that. And, it feels like it's never ending. Like, like when,
well, I think what you said in regards to that, hang on to that thought, but like what she said was, I feel like as I release some, like it opens up this whole pocket of a whole new thing. And like, why do I want to keep doing, like, in that moment, that was her
tiring,
feeling. Yeah.
Right? Like, and you get a whole new perspective on something, or just different levels of awareness. And as you continue to go down that road, it's like, I can't in good conscience shut it off, because then I feel blocked and I'm not in that, because it's a whole different feeling. It's a whole different feeling of like when I'm wanting to be in protection and I'm wanting to, engage in old patterns. It's where I feel safe, but I also have come to such an awareness of like, it's not serving me, and it's hurting me, and it's hurting how I interact with people and how I move through the world and how I show up. And so, but it feels scary to be in that openness, in that flow of, let's see what happens. It's like what we started this all with, right? Like it's a constant white canvas, but you're not starting. It's like when you start a painting over, you're not really starting a painting over. You're just taking everything you've learned to that point and applying in this new piece of work, and I look at that and how we do that in every day that we have. It's not like, I think of when my daughter was here and she's feeling like, I'm regressing, or I'm having these things come up, and I'm like, no one can take away your progress. No one can take away those experiences that you've had to this point. It's just coming out in different ways and asking to be looked at differently.
I was just thinking about, man, because I was listening, I didn't hang on to the thought. So I'm like, what was it? But it was pertinent to what we were talking about. Oh shoot. Well, it'll come back, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But it's kind of in that same line of like opening things up. Now I'm like spinning through like, what were you saying? What was I listening to? It had to do with the creative process.
When you're living in that energy, right? Like if you I don't know.
Oh, it was the badgering is actually what it was about, of when you're feeling in the flow. And you've talked about this a couple of times, and we've talked about it because I know the feeling. I know the feeling really well of, you feel in this flow, and your day is sunshiny, like the weather, and the temperature is just right, and everything seems like it's just moving beautifully. And then you have a day where, again, things are processing, and your mind might not feel good, or your body might not feel good, but this piece of badgering, of how I've noticed this, like when I don't feel well, it feels like sometimes the gates of hell all know that, and they're right at my door, just like battering and being the biggest bullies. And it makes it harder to like stay positive, or to stay on top of my thoughts, or to stay on top of my feelings. And you've talked about that a little bit in how you feel. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that here, like what that feels like for you? Just it triggered that when you're just talking about the things you're just talking about.
I think what I've noticed, so I didn't wake up feeling very well this morning. My body's been really hurting, and I recognized just how much, because I resisted taking anything last night. I thought maybe if I just sleep through it, I'll feel better in the morning. It wasn't a great night, but I woke up tired and in pain, and I finally broke down and took something for it. But in that waking to the point where I took something, I felt really closed off. I felt really kind of withdrawn. I didn't want to interact. I almost didn't even want to be seen, or like, I just kind of wanted to be in a little cave. And I didn't realize until after, like, I didn't realize I was feeling that way until I took the medicine, and how much, like, I still had a lot of pain and I still didn't feel good, but I felt enough energy to say I'm not feeling good, or just to have basic interaction. Like I just didn't realize how much energy, that communication takes. And I think it was just feeling super vulnerable.
What communication?
Just basic communication. Okay, cool. Like, we talk about asking for what you need, or just saying I'm not in a good space, or just being open about those things, instead of just withdrawing and thinking like there's something wrong, or there's it's a place for story creation, I think.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So on the question of energy, do you feel like it does take a lot of energy to interact, especially when you're not feeling well? And yesterday we had to be on,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fun, but it required a lot of energy. But excuse me, you're talking about just basic interaction and communication, and you said it takes a lot of energy, and I'm validating that it does. But do you feel like it takes more or less energy to say, hey, I'm not feeling good this morning, or my body hurts, or I feel like I'm being emotionally and mentally badgered by, thoughts or the things that are going on in my world? Does it take more or less energy to say that? Let me ask that better. Does it take less energy to say it, or more energy to hold it? More energy to say it, more energy to hold it.
I think it takes energy to just even be aware that that's even going on. Because when I had enough, relief from how I was feeling, that's when I think it was just really feeling my body, and I was more in a protective, more, I'm going to call it a primal state.
Sure.
And I feel like because I had a little bit of relief, I could think differently. I could actually think outside of what I was feeling to recognize that there was something to communicate. Because when I'm feeling that way, I don't even want to communicate. I don't want anything. I don't even know what I want or need or whatever. So I don't even know that I consciously realize I'm holding something, as much as I don't have the energy to even consider outside of what I'm feeling. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about other situations. I'm like, how do we apply this to our everyday lived experiences, or our relationships, or people who we have interactions with who we don't always know what their situation is. We just know that in our minds, maybe they're acting like a jerk, or maybe they're just being selfish, or maybe they're just, and we don't. I'm like, insert your own word or feeling there. We don't have often a clue of what they're experiencing inside their bodies or inside their minds. And how do we take that and we give people more grace? I'm thinking, like, specifically, I'm thinking, which is interesting, um, unfed bodies. The minds have to have food in order to really process and think clearly. And uh, I'm thinking of those who have, possible eating disorders, who have struggled with eating disorders, and how they've talked about that, about how when their bodies are unfed, they can't even think clearly about any of the other things in their world, because there's not enough there. And so it just, when we're not fed in other ways, maybe it's we're not fed spiritually, or we're not fed um, physically with actual food, um, or conversation, or good, that maybe, I don't even know where I'm going with that. It's just a thought that's like coming through my mind of, how do we offer more grace to those who we associate with when we don't know what's going on in their worlds? And maybe we do, and we get to be a little more mindful and understanding of that, gracious.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the places to offer a hand up, which is in our lingo, a hand up is a lending of your energy, a blending of it with theirs, in moments when they may be down, or they could use a little. It's empowering them with the gifts that you have as well, your own energy, and helping just balance things out for them instead of doing it for them. And sometimes it may mean doing it for them in the moment.
Yeah. I think, as far as, I don't think I answered your question around badgering that way. It's just when you were talking about, like, it seems like those voices are extra loud when you're in a lower state, or when your energy isn't there. And just speaking to that for myself is like, I find myself wanting to go to places of protection, to go back to wanting to put walls up. Or
is that okay? So let me ask you this: when you say go back to, are those patterns that you have practiced in other places in your lived experience, or just something like?
I think unknowingly. I think,
I mean, we all do.
yeah, definitely unknowingly, and just because of the way we communicate and bring awareness to some of that stuff that's going on, it's really gotten me to a place of recognizing what are the early stages, like really understanding what that is for me. So I don't, because I really don't want to be repeating things. And I think because before I just operated a lot on my own, and I worked things out, whether it was in a physical way or I went in, to myself, or I would paint it or whatever. Like I just never really had a place to express it. So I would just kind of like put up my guard and go about my business and stay super busy and, take on more projects and just do as a way to not, whether it was how I was dealing with feeling
As a way
it.
to not feel.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And it's not like I did that intentionally.
Sure. Sure. I mean, a lot of times I think we get, and that stuff comes from young. Like we start playing those patterns and those roles young.
Yeah.
Because we might not have had tools or information or knowledge on how to move through some of that stuff. And we just think it's just the way we are, just the way we do things, or that we're just okay. It hurts for a minute and then we're just going to move on. We're going to get, is that what I'm hearing you say? That was my world.
Well, I'm fine. And you just keep going and you pretend like everything's fine, or you just, the thought of expectation comes into my head. Something we were listening to earlier, just not having any expectations around anything, as a way to protect myself and not feel those things and not set myself up to feel something I didn't want to feel. And if I don't expect anything, then I can't be upset about it. And, that's, I feel like there's a place of gratitude and being grateful for the things that you get, but there's also a place of like having no expectation as a way to not look at what's going on in your world.
Yeah, to not be hurt.
At what point is that I'm playing into a denial because I don't want to look at this, I don't want to change this, I don't want to confront this as if it's with another person, but I want to live in a place of gratitude because gratitude feels good to me. It brings me joy. But at the same time, how do you do that when your needs aren't being met?
Yeah. So I'm here. So what I'm making sure I'm hearing you correctly is, as far as the expectations things go. A long time ago, I learned a definition of expectations, that it's like premeditated resentments. That really struck me. It was like 13 years ago in a book club where we studied cool things, and it just was like mind blowing because a few years earlier, when I lived in a different town, a lady who lived across the street, a few years older than I am, had said to me, "You got to learn how to not have expectations." And I was like, "What the? How do you live life without expectations?" And so what I'm hearing you say is it's that line of having no expectations can be a gift. It also could be a curse depending on how it chooses. So having no expectations in a way of like, I don't want to get hurt, so I'm not gonna expect anything of anybody so that I don't get hurt, which means you've got to wall up. Or it's the knowing that no expectations get you off of the hook, allows other people to be off the hook, and life to just flow more freely. And it actually allows for communication, for better communication in my experience. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Like,
well, tell me more about that. How does it allow for better communication?
Because so like if I were to have, if we're doing something and I find myself wanting to have an expectation, but I don't want to have expectations, I can come to you and say, okay, so we're doing this thing and we're leaving on Friday, and instead of saying, my plan is that we're going to leave at this time or around this and do these things and whatnot, and then I don't say anything, and it doesn't happen, then I'm upset. Or I can come to you and be like, hey, because I don't want to have the expectation. I want the free flow and the interaction, the energy between us. I can say, hey, there's this thing, in order for me to feel safe or to be okay, and like, and to have you just to understand where my mind's at. Like, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts on that? How do you want to contribute? What works for you? Is it that for me? That's where
conversation.
It brings in, communication at a different level, or that can happen at the work level. I think it's just so easy, and we've been trained to have expectations, knowingly or unknowingly, and it's just something that I've become more aware of in myself, and really try to practice just the communication piece of that, because I know I can do that very easily and find myself in feelings and emotions that aren't pleasant for me, and aren't, may not be pleasant for the people that I'm with, because then I feel like I haven't been listened to, or I haven't been heard, or my needs haven't been met when I actually didn't communicate them. So for me, that's a big thing. But I can see also how the wall of, and I hadn't thought about that, how the wall of no expectation, or having no expectations as a wall so you don't get hurt, is a real thing as well. It's kind of a, is it a kind of like put your head in the sand?
No. I think it's more, I'm gonna, instead of risking being vulnerable and trying to have communication that doesn't, I'm not talking about this situation, but I'm in my experience, it's like, I'm going to put up my wall and manage this within myself. And I don't have to risk having interaction with you that way, because it's already resolved within myself, no matter what happens. And I don't have to risk anything. I stay safe. I'm in my walls. I'm in my power. I'm holding my center. And I think that's what I've learned is far more challenging, to trust outside of that wall, and to, it's because it's vulnerable, and
it's incredibly vulnerable.
It's not even an expectation. It's just a not wanting to be hurt, and not wanting to,
that's what I'm saying. I think that's what I'm meaning when I'm saying no expectations as a wall, because we don't want to be hurt. Mm-hmm. So we're like, I'm not even going to expect anything. I don't expect you to hear me. I don't expect you to listen to me.
I'm not going to
ask you for anything, because
it's like a hyper independence.
Yeah, I don't want to be hurt, but it's still a wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that okay?
Absolutely is a wall. Like, but it's a place of safety. And I think when that wall goes up, it's like a questioning of other people's, this isn't known. This is just stuff I've noticed, more recently, as I just feel more aware of what some of those patterns are for myself. And just, it's just fascinating. I want to, because that's been the pattern of being like, I look after everything. I look after myself. And there is a point of that, but it's really hard to have relationship and communication if you're operating from a place of like, no, I don't want anything from anyone. I can do it all alone. There's no give and take there.
Yeah.
And it, in my mind, the badgering comes from like wanting to create a story of like evidence, give myself evidence of all the places that's been true, and not allow it to be different, because it's a way to stay safe.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm thinking about you, the listener, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, where and how have expectations played out in your world, in negative ways, or ways, I don't want to say negative, in ways that maybe weren't the most productive, or were hurtful in some aspect, and how have you learned to find some kind of balance of not putting up a wall and expecting nothing of anybody, because it's challenging to trust and you don't want to be hurt. And or also, wow, that thought didn't come together very clearly. How are you learning to practice, or how are you practicing not having expectations, but instead better communication with the people around you, being vulnerable in that way, and putting yourself out there to practice trust and to practice the possibility of being let down. But I think even as I say that, I'm like, can we be let down if we're actually practicing good communication and we're verbalizing those things to somebody? Like I know here I've said things like, I will do my best to honor your humanness and honor you as a person. And the reality is I'm gonna mess up sometimes. Like, that's just the reality of it. And um, but being able to trust in the same lane, and like just putting it out there, like, I'm going to do my best, but the reality is sometimes I might let you down. And that I try to do that with whoever I'm communicating with. And if I don't feel like I can do a job adequately, or that's going to serve the needs of that person, I usually say no. um, and ask for them to ask me another time when it comes out to some of those things, because I don't like letting people down.
Sure. But I think we're communicating. I was thinking of the question, what feels hard about communication. I think when we don't feel heard, feels really hard, and it doesn't create a space where you can share or you want to share, or you see a point in sharing if you don't feel heard. Um, so I'm like, what are ways that we can? The thought that's coming is like, seek to understand before you're understood.
Mm.
But I also feel like that's a challenging space to be in at times. And like, I want to understand, but at the same time, I don't feel heard. So how, it's like the chicken before the egg thing. I don't know.
It just reminds me of which is again probably a skipping of points, but the thought that it brings to mind when you talk about lead with understanding first before you're understood, is just that being willing to be the villain. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot lately, and or not even necessarily villain, but to be in relationship and not be understood, and letting that be okay. Just recognizing that you're not always going to be understood. That's been a challenging one for me in a few places, and I think it leads beautifully with the expectation thing, because it's like, well, but no, you should, because you're this or that, or you play this role in my life, or you whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, and like people's idea of, well, if you can't be this in my life, then you have no place in my life, which can be really hard. And I think especially when we're changing and growing and realizing those aren't the roles that feel right for us to play. You know, how many of us get inserted into a role that before we even knew who we were, or inserted into any situation that we weren't prepared for, you know, and it's easy to look back in hindsight, but I don't know, it makes me think of, look for the lessons. What can you be grateful for? But the reality is we change and we grow and we don't look at things the same. I always think of Maleficent, you know, and just how...
It's a great movie, by the way. I'd highly recommend it.
Just how much she, you know, her innocence and her playfulness and her trust, and how how profoundly she was betrayed, and the pain that came with that, and her just trying to make things right. um, but you can't forecast so far into the future and realize you're going to soften, or that something else is going to come into your life that will shift those things for you. And but that we're kept as a villain, that it doesn't matter what you do. I was thinking about that this morning, the difference between a hero and a villain, and how a hero.
So this came into my mind for a reason.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Like, a hero will get so much more grace, and their follies will be excused, and like will make justifications for their mistakes. And yet a villain will be judged so much more harshly. Yet we have both of those things within us, depending on who's looking at us all
Absolutely.
the time. I could be a hero and I can be a villain, and it's owning both sides of that, and recognizing that's in the villains and the heroes of your life too, that no one is one thing, they're everything. They're both
and
things.
they get the right and the privilege to be all of those things. It's a travesty to that's a bold statement. It's a travesty to keyhole people into one role or one position, because we're humans, but we're also magical spiritual beings who came here to learn and to grow, and that spirit side of us likes the unknown. It likes the creativity. It's the creativity part of us, and it's a travesty to keyhole somebody into one.
We keyhole ourselves.
Right.
Jen, I think...
I was just going to say that. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Well, but I'm like, do we do it to ourselves, or do we do it to ourselves based off trying to fit in, or fit a model, or fit a we do this a lot in families. If you guys want to learn some cool things that way, you can read. I learned it in John Bradshaw's work. He's got a few, but this was, I think it's called On the Family, actually. Just about family roles that we play, and how we each take on a role or are given a role, and how that cycle plays, when in reality we have the right and the privilege to be all of the roles at any time. I think when I learned that, it was such an incredible like aha moment for me, of like, wait a minute, I don't have to be just one thing. But it's been challenging to like play all the roles, because my conditioning is to follow the rules, has been to follow the rules, and to I practiced being perfect and perfectionism for a long time, and I had to show up a certain way, and to get out of some of that stuff and practice being some of those other things has been super super scary, and like gut wrenching sometimes.
Okay, so when I hear you say that, and when I think of
The thought of being the villain is like, arr!
Yeah, it goes against and how we'll move in our world to make sure we're not the villain to anyone, or we perceive we're not the villain to anyone, because we don't ever want to be seen that way, because we have this perception that it's bad, like that it's not right, and to act in any way that would make us at all like, oh my gosh.
Well, and I just think, as you're talking about that, I know we're getting close on time. Like this probably should have been, or we can be a topic of the next one, a continuation of, or maybe we can talk about it while we're in creative unraveling Paintcast tomorrow. But I think as you were talking about that, thinking back to the moment where I felt myself, I was on a stadium, like a high school stadium stairs. I was doing the stairs, and this moment I was in a gut-wrenching situation of really owning who I was as a sexual being, and my sexuality, and how that meshed or didn't mesh with my upbringing, and my spiritual training, and religious training. And the moment I was having a conversation, and it totally brought that moment of like feeling myself fall from grace, feeling myself fall from heaven, and like smashing into the ground. It was so vivid for me. And feeling myself, and granted, this is all inside of myself. Like I own this, and there's no outside blame for this, other than to say it is a challenge when the people around you create situations that do make it more challenging. But my feelings of becoming second class and like I have fallen from grace are my own. And just like looking back at all the things that I did or didn't do inside of that feeling, how I didn't hold my head as high, and I cowered to some situations, or I didn't speak out in many situations, because I already felt hugely judged. I already felt hugely misunderstood, because I no longer fit this model that I had perfected being a part of. Really, um, I knew how to do it really well. And so as you're talking about that, I was thinking back, wow, what all the things that I did, things I didn't say, or ways I didn't show up because I was afraid to be seen differently, even though I already was. It was super challenging to move past that. And in some ways I'm still moving past it. Like the reality is, in some ways I'm still moving past it. It just it's super fascinating to look, as you're talking, to look back and go, whoa, well, I did some of those things.
It reminds me of our angry conversation, like this idea that we feel like it's not, it's wrong, or it's too bold, or it's
To be
too
angry?
abrasive. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I never really allowed myself to be angry until earlier this year, and it's created some huge freedom for me to allow that.
Well, I'm like, there's freedom in being the villain. There's freedom in allowing yourself to be okay being seen that way, because it's, I don't even believe there's really a villain.
I was gonna say, note to the watcher or listener, like, we don't see ourselves as villains, but we're okay to be in that space in someone's story, if that needs to be. It doesn't feel good. Do you see yourself as a villain?
Oh, for some people, for sure.
But do you see yourself as the villain, or just in a particular person or person's stories at times?
I think that's where the badgering comes for me.
Today may not be the time to ask that question.
No, but it's another level of awareness of recognizing what the badgering is really understanding that badgering comes from buying into the story of being the villain from in a negative way.
Gotcha. Okay.
Versus being the villain and letting that be my strength, and knowing the truth of what I experienced, and just that it's okay to be seen that way, and it's okay to be misunderstood, and that there's no real linear timeline to it.
Okay, so in that understanding inside of yourself, just making sure that I'm hearing you clearly, it's a knowing that it's okay to be seen that way, because it's not, you know who you are intrinsically, you know your heart, you know your deeds, you know the fruits that you present, and that is what allows you to be somebody's bad guy or somebody's villain.
Yeah, because I have confidence in myself. I know my heart. I know my you know, and I think
so. It doesn't change how you show up, I guess, is what I'm saying.
No,
in your own world.
I think it's more because I don't feel good. There's parts of me that want to question that strength, and parts of me that want to question integrity, or and it's not even that I want to. It's just I don't feel good. So it's like those defenses that are normally there don't have the energy to be there. And it's just fascinating to me how easily negativity can come in. And I consider myself a, a really positive person. I can, find the value in any situation. And it's just, it's almost like you vilify yourself.
Oh, right there. Right there.
Yeah. To justify your walls, to justify your protection. It's, I was reading this thing about fear, and just recognizing in moments where I've not been in a good space of like how logical it is, and how much it makes sense, and just a reminder, fear is convincing, fear is logical, and I don't see it, in those moments I don't see it as fear. I see it as reality and being responsible and all these things that we're taught. But really it's just fear running amok, but it's disguised as
Stinking fear. Gotta have a seatbelt.
right, it's disguised as protection, as I want to keep you safe. So if I'm not strong, then it's like taking advantage of when I'm down, and fear can like move in and just find its way to protect me. I don't know. That's all very
No,
fascinating.
you do know, and I think you said that beautifully. Like, and I'm sitting here thinking, wow, it's incredible how we magically brought that full circle back to like just the humanness piece of this, and that on the days, this is more of a public service announcement in a very long way, to be like, hey, um, pay attention when the inside weather is feeling a little temperamental or just cloudy or just downright tempest. That more than likely you're going to be badgered, and you're going to have those thoughts that don't feel as good, or that are um, depressing in nature. And I'm not talking like depression, I'm talking depressing of feelings of emotions, and they cause a heaviness. And um, to just not give them a lot of credence, to notice them, to acknowledge them, say, hey, I recognize that you're here. And um,
sometimes even writing them, just like free flow writing, have no expectation, just write whatever comes through your consciousness. Sometimes it's just been such a revelation of like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that's what I was feeling. But that'll just bring some more awareness.
I love it. I love it.
So you're talking about giving credence, or don't give credence,
just acknowledging. And the writing piece is a beautiful way to acknowledge what's going on inside. It's like we've talked about this before. It's like the small toddler who's like, mom, 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 mom. It's trying to get our attention. Something is wanting our attention, and we can either shove it down and do what we normally do, get busy, or go to a substance or an addiction, or something that we don't have to feel that. Or we can be like, wow, this feels super uncomfortable. I can't tell you how many days in certain parts of my life I've just sat and done this because it feels so shitty and uncomfortable. And I'm not sure that but I've chosen to like sit with the feeling and with the emotion, and to acknowledge it. And what I have found is those moments that I've done that probably don't last as long as I think they do. When you're in it, it feels really crappy and like it's taking forever. But that in the acknowledgement of, wow, I see that you're here today, meaning I see that sadness is here today, or I see that anger may be here today, or I see that resentment or bitterness, or uh, aloneness, or what are some of the, like, that I don't matter, any of the things. Insert your own feeling. That when I acknowledge and I say, I see you, I know that you're here today, and I will do my best to listen to what you're trying to tell me, and teach me. And it's okay if you go take a nap. Like, I got this. we're okay. You can go take a nap. A lot of times that stuff passes more quickly. Um, can I share the tantrum story
What tantrum story?
from last week?
Oh gosh, okay.
Because I think it's a great way to end this and tie it up and provide a really simple, beautiful, fun example of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's been my experience as well, but Leah's is like super just and more present. In having no, you tell it. Okay, I'll tell it. So just having a day, having a moment. I don't know, you're having a day, you're just having a moment, and or some moments. And standing in the kitchen, and she looked at me and she said, "I just want to have a tantrum." I said, "Okay, have one."
And it was just like, it just really shocked me, and I didn't really want to have a tantrum. It was just like a moment where you just feel like a lot's coming at you, and I think of, little kids in my life, and they just throw down and have a tantrum. And I know that space, like, just how shocking the invitation, okay, have one, right? Like, I think of that when I used to run a daycare, and I'd have to get the kids all ready in their snowsuits, and it was just after nap time, and they didn't want to go, and they didn't want to put all this gear on and be outside in the cold and all this stuff, and I had to do school pickup, and they would have tantrums, and then I would just join them. I would just literally lay on the floor with them and copy what they're doing, and they would just be like, they'd stop almost immediately and just watch me and then giggle, and then we'd get ready and move on. Like, that's what that reminded me of just.
But as an adult, we're less likely to throw a tantrum. Well, no, that's not true. We totally throw the tantrum. We're less likely to acknowledge that we want to throw a tantrum.
Mm-hmm.
And in throwing one, just a lot of times there's collateral damage. But to acknowledge, again, it goes back to the communication piece of like, I'm feeling a lot of things right now, and I want to have a tantrum. And to have someone say, okay, cool. It was really fun to watch the jarring nature of like, what? Like,
what do you mean?
You just gave me permission to have a tantrum? Like, you just acknowledged the space that I'm in? You didn't say, it's okay, it's going to be better. It said, have one.
Yeah, like, you didn't try to mask over my feelings or tell me I should look at it different, or that it's all going to be okay. Like, you just let me own that I wanted to have a tantrum, and we're okay with that. And it was so jarring that I didn't need to have a tantrum.
So that's what I'm trying to say right there, is sometimes, a lot of times, and just the acknowledging of the feelings and coming to the awareness of them, and the awareness that sometimes we just need to have a tantrum makes things a whole lot better, a whole lot quicker. Feelings just want to be acknowledged, just like toddlers.
Yeah. And the feelings are going to come out whether we want them to or not. And I think it's just that reminder of we can help navigate that and create a safe space for it, or it will just
collateral damage.
Yeah, blurt out of you to some unsuspecting soul that maybe deserves it, or maybe most likely doesn't.
It happens. So
yeah.
Anyway, wow, humanness today, just showing up in humanness, and thanks for joining us. We would love to hear what your experiences are that way. Like, how do you show up on a day for yourself when you just don't feel as good? And how do you acknowledge your feelings and your emotions? Or do you just shove them away like maybe you have a habit or a pattern of doing? And where are you at in that process? We would love to hear about it. Also, if you are interested in being a guest on Live and Unscripted and have a cool story, you just want to come talk, we would love to have you be our guest. And you can reach out on the Facebook, the Righteous Rebels Facebook page, and let us know, send us a message. Watch tomorrow for our Creative Unraveling, Lia's Creative Unraveling Paintcast, where she teaches and I do some of that. I'm learning to love it. And then I think that's all for now. We do have some stuff coming up. We just got to get it on the calendar and get some events made so that you know how to be a part of it.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Remember, be bold,
be brave,
be a rebel.
We'll see you soon.